16 at the Westin Peachtree Plaza Hotel in Atlanta, Georgia. It's our first live from the Chick-Fil-A Peach Bowl radio show. Alongside Caleb Spinner, Cole Eplet, Matt Goldman, I'm Tyler Danberg saying hello and happy holidays from Atlanta. We are just days away, guys, from the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl between number 1 Georgia and number 4 Ohio State. Day 2 of football media is in the books, but this is day 1 for us. Matt got in today from Newark, New Jersey. He was able to get a flight in. Cole, Caleb, and myself, we trekked from Worcester, Ohio to Atlanta, about 10.5-hour drive yesterday. But guys, how are we doing? Caleb, let's start off with you.
Road Warriors in the house, baby. Powered through that. I'm going to give a special shout out to Cole because I think he deserves it. We offered time and time again to take over the driving duties. And what did he say? He could have said, yes, I'm tired. He could have said, I want to doze off in the passenger seat. He said no. He said, absolutely not. Are you taking the wheel of this HRV? I'm going ahead. I'm trucking in. I am taking the driving duties. So all 11 and a half hours, 10 and a half of the drive, plus the hour-ish that we did of breaks and bathroom stops and things like that, he took all of those. So big props to Mr. Emplet.
You know, first off, I appreciate that. All of a sudden, with the recent cancellation of the airlines, we had to adjust. We had to get a rental car. So we're making the best of a situation, right? But, hey, it was a great time. We're Road Warriors, like we talked about, and it's great to be here. Like you said, this is our first day here at the Westin Peachtree Plaza, along for the college football playoff semifinal week. But it's been great. The hospitality from everyone's been great. It's been great to be able to sit down, talk with Ohio State defensive coordinator Jim Knowles today, along with select players. We'll get into that later. But it's been great so far, getting ourselves acquainted and really getting our feet settled a little bit.
This is true Southern hospitality. I forgot that we were in the South, but now that you mention how nice everybody was, it just might be native to the region.
Kind of reminded me of New York and how nice people are.
Oh, come on.
Just kidding. But
clearly you don't live there then.
Credit to Cole.
Well, he lives in New Jersey.
He did
I know, but if he thinks that they're all nice people.
I'm just joking around. But credit to Cole and the way he got the crew down here, and really grateful and appreciative of SGSR, and we're able to represent them here at the playoff. But Cole, was it caffeine that got you there, or was it just the music in the car, the ambiance of Tyler and Caleb?
Tyler and I.
What exactly got you to Atlanta?
You know, I'll just say it was the excitement of getting here, spending the week with you guys, and having a great time covering Ohio State football. And, you know, we're Road Warriors, and the other time why I also drove is just simply because the rental car was under my name. So that's another reason why, but I didn't want to take responsibility if something were to happen to it. I wanted to be on my name. But, yeah, again, we're having a great time. Night 1 for us, Wednesday here, and we're excited to keep it going.
The vibes are high.
And maybe a little bit of Jimmy Eats World and Jonas Brothers sprinkled in there. That's what got through the ride.
We had some good tunes. Yeah, I would agree. We had some good tunes here and there. It was a good time.
Cole consistently played the hits, and we hope to do so as well. Each night we'll be recapping what went down today. It's going to be a busy media schedule tomorrow with both teams, Georgia and Ohio State, having their media days at the College Football Hall of Fame. But, Cole, I'll start off with you. What stuck out to you today amidst a lot of different interviews, players speaking alongside defensive coordinator Jim Knowles for Ohio State, Jeff Monken for Georgia, the offensive coordinator. But what stuck out to you today?
Yeah, I guess we'll start simply just this morning, as you mentioned, speaking with Jim Knowles and the select defensive players from Ohio State. Just kind of figuring out and picking their brains of their whole mindset going into Georgia. Of course, this is a college football playoff game. They're the 4 seed going against the top dog, the juggernaut, which is the Georgia Bulldogs. And Caleb, I think you asked the question. You said, of course, Ohio State has all this film on Georgia across the entire season, but at the same time, we saw that LSU was able to have a good performance offensively against the Bulldogs in their SEC championship game, asking Jim Knowles, hey, how do you really approach this? Is it more of a give and take, see how they first come out in this first quarter? So to see what his mindset was to say, hey, they have a really good, versatile offense. We talked about it. They have 2 tight ends who are very versatile. They're basically wide receivers. He compared that to an NFL team, saying these guys can be able to grab the ball and they can do some great things on that offensive end. It was great being able to pick his mind and see how his players feel as well. Of course, talking to some players like Jack Sawyer, he had mentioned specifically it's Ohio against the world. And he said it's always has been. They knew that from the moment they came to Ohio State, and they're going to keep doing it now. He said this past month has been the best practice that they have had. He said that they are pissed off and they want to show up in this big game, of course, against Georgia. So you can definitely tell on this Ohio State side, the vibes are high, the energy is high, and they're ready to go for Saturday.
Right before Ohio State had even been considered for the playoff, JT Tuimoloau, the defensive end, apparently made a powerful speech, or a testimony as he called it, saying, hey, this is an uncertain time, but we have to trust the plan, and we have to see how this is figured out and how it goes down. Caleb, you were able to ask a couple questions to Jim Knowles, to safety Lathan Ransom. What caught your eye today in media availability?
Well, I'll give a general answer, and there was a lot, I'll say for sure, and a lot of it revolved around the scheme and it revolved around preparation, and there's a time and place for that, but I think the general attitude is what stuck with me. Not a lot of personality today. And I know that we had Tommy Eichenberg, and he's always very bright and cheerful at media. That's sarcasm for those of you who couldn't pick up on it. But everybody was quiet, and I think you saw that most in JT Tuimoloau. He was not his usual bright, happy, laid-back self, and, a little bit of Steel Chambers shone through. He's kind of developed a bright personality, developed a little bit of a broken shell, if you will, as we've gone through this media season. But everybody you could feel was just somber and grateful to be here, but at the same time understands that they did not make it here on their own strength. They made it here through, I'll say luck for lack of a better term, but at the very least, they did not control their route to get here. They are living on borrowed time, and they respect it. It would be absolutely unfitting with all the talk that we've heard about that wasn't our best in Michigan, and if we get a chance at the college football playoff, we're going to take it seriously, to then see them come out and crack jokes and be all smiles and things like that. It would not have matched up with what those statements have said. So I think it was good to see them come out, respect the challenge that Georgia is going to bring to them, but also say, you know what, we've had these trips out to the MLK church to start. We've had the game nights and things like that when we get in here, but we're still very much business. And we do those because the Peach Bowl likes to accommodate us and likes to have some fun things here, but we are all business even still.
There's a job to be done. Here is Tuimoloau talking about Georgia's uniqueness, especially on the offensive line.
I think it all starts with preparation, just being ready for whatever is going to be thrown at you. Great group of guys, great tackles. I think we just have to, stay poised and just be ready for the changes.
So you just heard JT Tuimoloau, who leads the team in tackles for a loss, talking about how Georgia rotates a lot of their offensive tackles. They have a lot of versatility, especially on the offensive side. Matt, I'll bring you in here. The Bulldogs are a unique program, maybe a totally different team that Ohio State has faced because they have a lot of different pieces that they can bring in. What are some of those pieces, and how can they be on display this Saturday?
Yeah, Tyler, you make a really good point that they have so many pieces and so much versatility, but I think a lot of the different opponents Ohio State's faced this year, they've faced a strong receiver group. They've faced a strong offensive line. They've faced a great backfield in Penn State, and that's where I think it really starts for Georgia. Dejon Edwards and Kenny McIntosh, or RJ McIntosh, excuse me. Those two in the backfield are really dangerous, and you're able to put 1 and 2 in and cause some confusion. Go back to that Penn State game when they used 3 running backs by committee to confuse Ohio State. Ohio State almost lost that game. Great offensive line. You talk about that Michigan game that they had trouble against, and then wide receivers, they kind of faced a lot of good receivers all year. Penn State, I'll go back to that game once again. Michigan as well. But for Georgia, I think what makes them so tricky is that they're just really athletic. Brock Bowers is arguably the best tight end in the country. Stetson Bennett, he is the most mobile quarterback they're going to see all year. He can run with his legs. He's passed the ball for over 3,000 yards, and he was a Heisman finalist. He's done what C.J. Stroud did in the air, so it's kind of like they're looking at themselves in a mirror in a way offensively that there are multiple pieces. Ohio State can do the same thing, but this is where the defense has gotten tricked up, and now that all these pieces are coming together for a four-headed monster when it comes to tight ends, wide receivers, running backs, quarterbacks, it's going to be tricky.
Number 2 offense in Ohio State versus the number 2 defense in the country. in Georgia. But is this still an evenly matched game, or is it just a game of strengths?
When it comes to how that looks, number 2 on offense, number 2 on defense, you could argue that it's a sword versus shield in that picturesque sense of a word. But I think offense is obviously going to be a big part of this game. I think they're 2 very talented defense. I think you're clearly not watching either of these teams if you don't agree with that. But where it's going to come down to is defense. And it's going to be who wants to step up, who wants to play more. And I think that's why Georgia has that edge, is because Ohio State has been questionable. Not at the linebackers, not at the front 4 or 5 or 6 or however many Jim Knowles loads up at times, but it's in the secondary. And it's at Denzel Burke, it's at Lathan Ransom at sometimes, it's at Cam Martinez when he's come into play. Tanner McAllister has somewhat held down that area, but he's not perfect at all there. And don't get me wrong, I couldn't do any better if you put me back there. I'd get beat about 2 yards into the route. You've seen how not mobile I am on my feet. Former lineman raising his hand here. But it's got to be that. Georgia is so balanced, so deadly. I don't know if you guys remember back, but we were talking about Georgia in week 2, just off-air casual conversations as we do about college football. And we looked at each other and we said, this might be the first number 1 overall team that we've seen there who is not in this spot by their offense alone. Their defense is carrying just as much weight for that top ranking as the offense did. Georgia is balanced. Ohio State's had one big Achilles heel. That's going to be the deciding factor, is can they lock that down finally?
That's exactly where I was going to go. Ohio State's secondary has been their issue all year when it comes to pass breakups, interceptions. The stats don't line up to a top 30 defense. And also, open field tackling is where I've really seen Ohio State struggle. It happened on the first play for Ohio State this year. Lorenzo Styles of Notre Dame caught a ball. I believe he went for over 40-plus on that catch because Tanner McAllister couldn't tackle open field one-on-one. Happened again in Michigan.
Against a big body, too.
Yes.
I'll add that in with Brock Bowers in here, too, coming from Georgia.
So you have those athletes with Georgia, and they're able to run one-on-one with your cornerbacks with no safety help, possibly in the 4-2-5. That could cause trouble for Ohio State, especially, again, I said a 4-2-5. That's going to cause a tight end mismatch for Ohio State.
And here's Jim Knowles talking about that tight end mismatch with not just the Mackey Award winner Brock Bowers, but also Darnell Washington, who's pulled in 3 touchdown grabs this season and is 4th on the team in receiving.
I mean, I think you have to, because of the versatility, the fact that they can line up tight to the formation and wide, you have to prepare for those 2 tight end sets, and you're not going to get that all the time. But if you're not prepared for that, they can do damage from the line of scrimmage, and then you make the adjustments when they move out. But they're certainly dangerous wherever they line up.
Cole, Brock Bowers, Darnell Washington, even guys like Oscar Delp and Eric Gilbert, they can make an impact, especially playing the tight end position. And, again, that Matt mentioned as well, Kenny McIntosh, a really good receiving running back. So how does this filter in? How do Ohio State linebackers try and put a stop to the running backs and tight ends that can wreak havoc in the passing game?
Yeah, it's there's really no question how good this Georgia team is, and we've seen it all season long. And in that SEC championship, they're a very, very versatile offense with multiple weapons that you hit on. 2 tight ends that they really like to run through, a receiving back as well. It's just going to be the biggest challenge for Ohio State, specifically linebackers Tommy Eichenberg, Seal Chambers, who we got to talk to today. And specifically asking those guys as well, we had got the chance. Tommy Eichenberg was up there, Lathan Ransom, and Jack Sawyer. And when asked, they all kind of compared. They said, hey, who's the closest team that you could compare Georgia's offense to? And they didn't say it. They all said Penn State, but in reality, they all knew what they were thinking. They all said Michigan. Michigan was the closest team that they had to play this year, and that was the biggest competition. Of course, the closest team compared to Georgia on this offensive end. So seeing their mistakes in terms of linebacker groups, just seeing giving up big plays is something that they're going to kind of focus on just a little bit. Of course, Michigan was able to hammer those home run plays that we saw so consistently in the first half, and that's going to be one of the big evidences for Ohio State. How can they tone down the home run plays and just kind of force Georgia to move the ball slowly up the field?
And that's what Coach Knowles touched on, too, is he was asked Plain and simply, do you blame that Michigan loss on those 5 big explosive plays? One-word answer, yes.
He was poignant, he was quick to it, and again, you can make the argument that those 5 plays are the only plays that define that game. Again, that's for everybody else to decide, including Jim Knowles. He pretty much decided it there.
They define that game, but they don't encompass all the problems. And I think that's the one bit where you look at that, and yes, it's a big headline. One-word answer, simple. That's going to catch all the flack is, yes, next question, move on. But it does not address all the issues that are there. Because if I'm remembering the game right, yeah, there were 5 big plays that Michigan had, but they were all for a different reason. And they all had an ugly monster in the closet that needs to be addressed if you're going to come in and hang with Georgia.
Blown coverage, missed tackles, that's exactly right. Those home run plays that Michigan was able to exploit, and that's something that Georgia's high-powered offense has been able to do all year against these SEC opponents.
So here's Stetson Bennett on the flip side for Georgia, another Heisman finalist alongside Ohio State quarterback C.J. Stroud, talking about how they can try and beat Ohio State's defense and what stands out about Jim Knowles and Ryan Day's defensive system. Take a listen.
First of all, they have really good players, and they execute their system. They try to cause havoc. They can come from a lot of different places. They do their assignment, and in order for us to be successful, we have to do ours. That's trusting, Said whenever he's making the calls and, talking to him. But at the end of the day, they've got a really good football team. We've got a really good football team. And it's going to come out down to who executes better on Saturday.
The quarterback, Stetson Bennett, talking about how Ohio State, what stands out, their ability to create havoc and get to the quarterback. We talked about Georgia's offensive line being strong, but Ohio State likes to bring the pressure, and Matt, creating havoc is what the Buckeyes like.
No doubt, JTT, Zach Harrison, Jack Sawyer, Michael Hall Jr. are going to bring the pressure. Jim Knowles will dial that up properly against Georgia. But Ohio State's going against a very mobile quarterback in Stetson Bennett. Bennett's one of the most mobile quarterbacks in the country. Yeah, he's a little older than everybody else on the field by a couple of years. So the maturity plus the development of Stetson Bennett is a reason why he was a Heisman finalist. He just understands the game better than a lot of these younger guys. He can pass the ball really well. He's not a deep ball passer, but he's got the touch to get his playmakers the ball in open space, and then they go down the field and do the rest. But with Stetson, it's his mobility that really is troubling, in his pocket presence as well, because with Stetson, if you get him on the outside, he's going to take it to the corner and get to that pylon or get to that first down chain, and he's not going to stop. So that's where Ohio State's linebackers also come into play in that front 7, where you need to apply the pressure, but you also need to be a QB contained with Steel Chambers, following him around, or Tommy Eichenberg, following around Stetson Bennett to make sure he does not get far up the field.
Contained with the defensive ends, too. Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau, Zach Harrison, too. We've started to see it late, the big games from Zach Harrison, a little bit of a slow start entering the season. But another thing that I want to look at with those quarterback contains is pressuring with those tackles and defensive guards there. And one guy who's going to do that is a fully healthy Mike Hall Jr., who we saw wreak havoc at Notre Dame.
He's a guy that can really break the game. Look at that Michigan State game. He played 7 snaps and he had 2 sacks. So he's a guy that could really take over a game on the defensive line when he's healthy, and it looks like he is going to be healthy. Again, we're talking mostly about the defense for Ohio State because the defense spoke today along with the DC, Jim Knowles, Georgia, Todd Monken, their co-offensive coordinator, and the Georgia offense, they spoke. So we had a little bit of a flip side compared to day one, and then we'll have Media Days coverage tomorrow where, Cole, it's going to be a lot of different activity and a little bit of everything, too. We'll get some coaches. We'll get some players on the offensive, defensive, and special team sides. They talk about it being complimentary football, but we're going to get a little bit of complimentary media activity tomorrow.
Oh, definitely so. So if anybody listening right now has any questions that they would like to ask from Ohio State Buckeyes,
send them in.
Send them in. We'll be able to talk to for the majority, a lot of the players, and I think any of the players are going to be available tomorrow during that 45-minute window that we have. So we'll be able to try to get any questions answered, and that'll be the main goal, just talking to some guys and seeing what we can find out.
We gotta plug the socials at the end of this so they can drop them to us.
Tweet at us at SGSR_OSU if you have any questions, and we will tweet that out if anybody has any questions. Also, you can follow that account and follow all of us to get more updates on the game and the coverage as well. Of course, we will be counting down the days until we hit the air. 7 p.m. pregame, 8 p.m. kickoff for Georgia and Ohio State in the college football playoff semifinal. The Chick-Fil-A Peach Bowl will begin at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturday evening. But every single night leading up to Saturday's game, we will be quickly recapping each day here in Atlanta. But for Caleb Spinner, Matt Goldman, Cole Epplin, I'm Tyler Danberg signing off. This has been day 2 of Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl coverage, day 1 of ours on Scarlet and Gray Sports Radio.